David Thompson was having one of those busy Tuesday afternoons at his law office. Papers scattered across his desk, 3 different cases demanding his attention, and a client meeting scheduled in 20 minutes. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. This was just another day in the life of a working father trying to make ends meet in the suburbs. His phone buzzed. Not the office line, but his personal cell. He glanced at the screen and saw his daughter's name. That was odd. Ava never called during school hours. She knew the rules about phone usage at Jefferson Middle School, and she was usually good about following them. "Hey, sweetheart, shouldn't you be in class right now?" he answered, already sensing something was wrong. The voice that came through the phone made his blood run cold. It was barely a whisper, shaky and broken. "Dad, I need you to come get me, please." David immediately pushed his chair back from the desk. In 14 years of being Ava's father, he had never heard her sound like this. Not when she broke her arm falling off her bike. Not when their old dog passed away. This was different. This was pure fear. "Ava, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" I can't come out of the bathroom, Dad. Everyone's looking at me. They're all laughing and pointing, and Her words dissolved into quiet sobs. David was already grabbing his car keys. "Which bathroom? Where are you exactly?" "The one near the gym." "Dad, they all saw it. The whole school saw it." "I can't face them. I can't walk out there." "Saw what, honey? What happened?" But the line had gone quiet except for the sound of his daughter crying. David's mind raced through possibilities. Had she been hurt? Embarrassed? Was someone threatening her? The not knowing was killing him. "Ava, listen to me. I'm coming right now. Stay exactly where you are. Don't open that door for anyone except me, okay?" "Okay," came the tiny voice. "Hurry, Dad, please hurry." David grabbed his jacket and rushed past his secretary. "Cancel my afternoon appointments. Family emergency." The drive to Jefferson Middle School usually took 15 minutes. David made it in 8. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. Every red light felt like torture. Every slow driver in front of him felt like a personal insult. He kept thinking about that phone call. The way Ava's voice sounded so small and scared. His daughter was tough. She played soccer, stood up to bullies, and never backed down from a challenge. For her to be hiding in a bathroom, refusing to come out, something terrible must have happened. David pulled into the school parking lot and jogged toward the main entrance. Jefferson Middle School looked like every other suburban school built in the 90s. Brick facade, perfectly manicured lawn, and a sign out front advertising the upcoming fall festival. Everything looked normal and peaceful. Too peaceful for whatever crisis was happening inside. The main office smelled like disinfectant and copy paper. Behind the counter sat Mrs. Rodriguez, the school secretary he'd met during orientation. She looked up from her computer with the practiced smile of someone who dealt with concerned parents all day long. "Mr. Thompson, what brings you in today?" "My daughter called me. She's upset about something and won't come out of the bathroom. I need to get to her." Mrs. Rodriguez's expression shifted slightly, not to concern, but to something that looked almost like annoyance. "Oh, you mean the little drama from gym class?" "Yes, we're aware of the situation." "Drama?" David felt his jaw tighten. "What kind of drama?" "You know how teenage girls can be. They get into these little spats, make mountains out of molehills. I'm sure Ava will be fine once she calms down." The casual dismissal in her voice made David's stomach turn. This woman was talking about his terrified daughter like she was throwing a tantrum over a broken nail. "Where's the principal? I need to speak with someone about what happened." "Principal Williams is in meetings all afternoon. But really, Mr. Thompson, these things usually work themselves out. Maybe you could talk to Ava about being more resilient. Kids today are just so sensitive." David stared at her for a long moment. Sensitive? His daughter was hiding in a bathroom, sobbing and scared, and this woman was calling her sensitive? "Which way is the bathroom near the gym?" Mrs. Rodriguez pointed down a hallway with obvious reluctance. "But sir, you can't just go wandering around the school. We have protocols. My daughter needs me. I'm going to her." David walked away before the secretary could say another word. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. Classrooms on either side buzzed with the normal sounds of learning. Teachers explaining math problems, students reading aloud, the scratch of pencils on paper. Normal school sounds that made whatever was happening to Ava feel even more wrong. He passed trophy cases and student artwork, bulletin boards covered with announcements about the book fair and picture day. Everything looked so innocent and wholesome. But somewhere in this building, his daughter was in crisis, and the adults in charge seemed to think it was no big deal. The bathroom was at the end of a long corridor, right where Mrs. Rodriguez had said it would be. David knocked gently on the door. "Ava? Honey, it's Dad. I'm here." "Dad?" The voice was muffled but full of relief. "Yes, sweetheart. Can you open the door?" There was a long pause. What if someone sees? What if they're still out there? David looked up and down the empty hallway. There's nobody here but me. The hall is completely empty. He heard the lock click and slowly the door opened just a crack. One of Ava's eyes peered out, red from crying and full of embarrassment. "Hey there," David said softly. "Come here." The door opened wider and Ava stepped out. David's heart broke at the sight of her. His confident, strong daughter looked smaller somehow. Her shoulders were hunched, her head down, and she kept glancing around nervously as if expecting someone to jump out at any moment. David wrapped his arms around her, and she melted into his embrace. He could feel her whole body shaking. "It's okay. I've got you. You're safe now." They stood there in that empty hallway for several minutes. David didn't push for details. He didn't demand explanations. He just held his daughter and let her know she wasn't alone. Whatever had happened here today, whatever had reduced his brave girl to this frightened child, he was going to get to the bottom of it. And someone was going to answer for it. But first he needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. The real story was still locked inside that bathroom where Ava had been hiding. And David had a feeling that once he heard it, nothing would ever be the same. David guided Ava back into the bathroom and locked the door behind them. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the tile walls. It wasn't exactly private, but it was better than standing in the hallway where anyone could walk by. "Take your time," he said, settling down on the floor beside her. "Just tell me what happened." Ava wiped her nose with a paper towel and took a shaky breath. "It started in gym class. We were supposed to change into our uniforms, you know? And I was just minding my own business, getting ready for volleyball." David nodded, trying to stay patient even though every parental instinct was screaming at him to know what had hurt his daughter. "These 3 girls came over to me. I don't really know them that well. They're in 8th grade and they usually don't talk to 7th graders like me." Ava's voice was still shaky, but she was getting stronger as she talked. "What did they say?" Ava looked down at her hands. "At first they were acting all friendly, complimenting my hair, saying how pretty it looked. I thought maybe they were just being nice, you know? I was kind of excited that the older girls were paying attention to me." David's stomach was already starting to twist. He had learned enough about bullying to know that it often started with fake kindness. "But then things got weird," Ava continued. "One of them, Katie, she started touching my hair without asking. She was like, 'Wow, it's so different from ours. What does it feel like?' And I told her to stop because it made me uncomfortable. Good for you for standing up for yourself." That's when they got mean. Really mean." Ava's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Katie said that my hair looked messy and unprofessional. She said it was distracting in class and that maybe I should do something about it." David felt anger starting to bubble up inside him, but he kept his voice calm. "What happened next?" "I told them to leave me alone and tried to walk away. But they wouldn't let me. They surrounded me and before I knew what was happening, Katie pulled out scissors from her bag." "Scissors?" Ava nodded, tears starting to flow again. "She said she was going to help me look more presentable. And then she just started cutting." David's hands clenched into fists. "She cut your hair without permission?" "Not just her. All 3 of them took turns. They were laughing and making jokes about how my hair was too wild and needed to be tamed. They said things about how I should be grateful they were helping me fit in better." The rage building inside David was like nothing he had ever felt before. Someone had physically assaulted his daughter in school during class time while making cruel comments about her appearance. "Honey, show me," he said as gently as he could. Ava turned around, and David's heart sank. Her beautiful natural hair, which she had been so proud of and had taken months to learn how to care for properly, was chopped unevenly. Chunks were missing from different sections, leaving jagged, uneven lengths that would take months to grow back. But the physical drama, was only part of it. David could see in his daughter's posture and the way she hunched her shoulders and kept her head down that the emotional damage was much worse. "There's more, isn't there?" he asked. Ava nodded miserably. "While they were doing it, One of them was recording everything on her phone. She said it would be funny to post online. And she did, Dad. She posted it everywhere. David closed his eyes. In today's world, humiliation didn't stay private. It got shared, commented on, and spread to hundreds of people within minutes. "Show me," he said. Ava pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She opened up the school's social media group, and there it was. A video of 3 girls surrounding his daughter, cutting her hair while laughing. The comments underneath were brutal. "Look how much better she looks now." Someone had to do something about that mess. Finally, someone made her look normal. Maybe now she'll fit in. There were dozens of comments, and they kept coming. David watched his daughter's humiliation being broadcast to her entire school community. Students, parents, even some teachers had seen this video. But the comments weren't just mean, they were targeted. They focused specifically on Ava's hair texture, her appearance, and how she needed to change to fit in with her classmates. The undertones were unmistakable. "Did anyone try to stop them?" David asked. There were other girls in the locker room, but nobody said anything. A few people were recording it too, from different angles. I think they thought it was entertainment. David felt sick. Not only had his daughter been assaulted, but other students had watched it happen and done nothing. Some had even encouraged it by recording. What about teachers? Where were the gym teachers? Coach Henderson was in her office. The attack happened really fast, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. By the time it was over, everyone was acting like nothing happened. The other girls told me I looked better and that I should thank them. David stood up and paced the small bathroom. His mind was racing. This wasn't just bullying. This was assault. It was targeted harassment based on his daughter's appearance and heritage, and it was all documented on video. "Did you report it to anyone?" Ava shook her head. "I was too embarrassed. I came straight here and hid. I've been getting notifications all afternoon about people commenting on the video and sharing it. Everyone at school has seen it by now." David knelt down beside his daughter again. "Listen to me very carefully. This is not your fault, not even a little bit. What those girls did was wrong, and it was illegal." "Illegal?" "Yes, they assaulted you. They cut your hair without permission, which is assault. They targeted you based on your appearance and made comments that were discriminatory, and they recorded it and shared it online without your consent." Ava looked up at him with surprise. "So this isn't just mean girl drama?" "No, sweetheart. This is much more serious than that, and we're going to make sure something is done about it." David helped his daughter stand up. "First, we're going to document everything. I'm going to take pictures of your hair and screenshots of all these social media posts. Then we're going to talk to the principal. Dad, I don't want to make a big deal out of this. What if it makes things worse?" David put his hands on his daughter's shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "Ava, someone hurt you. They humiliated you in front of your peers and posted it online for everyone to see. This is already a big deal. The question is whether we're going to let them get away with it. But what if everyone thinks I'm a tattletale? Then those people aren't worth worrying about. The right thing to do isn't always the easy thing to do. But if we don't stand up for you now, they'll think they can do this to other kids too." Ava thought about this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but I'm scared. I know you are. But you're not doing this alone. I'm going to be with you every step of the way." David took out his own phone and began documenting everything. Pictures of Ava's hair from multiple angles, screenshots of the social media posts and comments. He saved the original video to his phone as evidence. As he worked, he felt his resolve strengthening. This wasn't just about getting justice for his daughter anymore. This was about sending a message that this kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated. Not at this school, not anywhere. "Ready to go face the principal?" he asked. Ava squared her shoulders in a gesture that reminded David of her mother. "Let's go." David and Ava walked back toward the main office, and with each step, David felt his anger growing. The hallways were starting to fill with students as classes changed periods. He watched as kids glanced at Ava, some whispering to friends, others pulling out phones. Word traveled fast in middle school, and clearly everyone had seen the video. Ava kept her head down, trying to hide her uneven hair under her hoodie. David wanted to shield her from every stare, every whisper. But he knew the only way to really protect her was to make sure this never happened again. Mrs. Rodriguez looked up as they approached the front desk. "Back so soon? I told you these things usually work themselves out." "I need to speak with Principal Williams immediately," David said, his voice firm but controlled. "Like I mentioned before, she's in meetings all afternoon." David placed his hands on the counter and leaned forward slightly. Then you need to get her out of those meetings. My daughter was assaulted during gym class today, and I have video evidence. This is not a request. Mrs. Rodriguez's casual demeanor faltered for the first time. Assaulted? Mr. Thompson, I think you might be overreacting. Kids have disagreements all the time. 3 students cut my daughter's hair without her permission while recording it and posting it online. That's assault and harassment, not a disagreement. The secretary's eyes widened slightly as she looked at Ava for the first time, noticing her disheveled hair. Oh my. Well, let me see if I can reach Principal Williams. She made a quick phone call, speaking in hushed tones. After a few minutes, she hung up. She'll see you in 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes felt like an hour. David watched students walk by, many of them glancing at Ava and whispering to their friends. Some were even pulling up the video on their phones to show others. His daughter's humiliation was being replayed over and over again. Mr. Thompson, Principal Williams will see you now. They were led into a large office with motivational posters covering the walls. Principal Williams was a woman in her late 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Please, have a seat. Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned there was some kind of incident today. David remained standing. My daughter was assaulted during gym class. 3 8th-grade students cut her hair without permission, made inappropriate comments, and recorded the entire thing. The video is now circulating on social media. Principal Williams glanced at Ava, taking in her appearance for the first time. David watched her face carefully, looking for signs of concern, anger, or shock. Instead, he saw what looked like mild inconvenience. I see. Well, that does sound unfortunate. Have you spoken with the other girls involved to hear their side of the story? Their side? David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Principal Williams, look at my daughter. Look at what they did to her hair. There's video evidence. What other side could there possibly be? Mr. Thompson, I understand you're upset. Any parent would be. But we've found that these situations often have more complexity than they initially appear to have. David pulled out his phone. Would you like to see the video? Principal Williams held up her hand. That won't be necessary right now. I'm sure we can resolve this through our standard mediation process. Mediation? For assault? Now, Mr. Thompson, let's not use such strong language. What happened today was inappropriate, certainly, but calling it assault might be a bit dramatic. David stared at her in disbelief. They physically cut her hair without permission. They recorded it and posted it online. They made discriminatory comments about her appearance. How is that not assault and harassment? Principal Williams shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Look, I'm not saying the other girls were completely in the right, but teenagers can be thoughtless sometimes. I'm sure they didn't mean any real harm. They didn't mean harm. David's voice was rising despite his efforts to stay calm. Look at my daughter. Look at what they did to her hair. Look at how scared and humiliated she is. I understand you're protective of Ava, that's natural, but we need to consider that perhaps there were things she could have done differently to avoid this situation. The room went completely silent. David felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Are you suggesting this is my daughter's fault? Not fault exactly, but we encourage all our students to find ways to fit in and avoid conflicts. Sometimes that means making adjustments to our appearance or behavior. David looked at his daughter, who was staring at the floor with tears in her eyes. She was hearing the principal of her school suggest that she had brought this attack on herself by looking different. What kind of adjustments are you suggesting my daughter should make? Principal Williams seemed to realize she was walking into dangerous territory. I'm just saying that if students make an effort to blend in more, they often have fewer social conflicts. Blend in how exactly? Well, you know, dress more conventionally, style their hair in more traditional ways, things like that. David felt his jaw clench. You're telling my daughter that she should change her natural hair to avoid being attacked by other students? I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I'm simply explaining how these social dynamics work. David stood up. Let me explain how these legal dynamics work. 3 students committed assault against my daughter. They recorded it and distributed it online without her consent. They made discriminatory comments based on her appearance. That's not social dynamics. That's criminal behavior. Principal Williams' friendly facade was starting to crack. Mr. Thompson, I think you're being overly dramatic about this situation. These are good kids from good families. They made a mistake, but destroying their futures over one poor decision seems excessive. What about my daughter's future? What about the trauma they've caused her? What about the fact that every student in the school has now seen her being humiliated?
Kids are resilient.
Ava will bounce back from this. But if we involve lawyers and police, it could have serious consequences for the other girls. David couldn't believe what he was hearing. So your concern is protecting the students who committed assault, rather than the student who was victimized. I'm concerned about all my students, and sometimes that means finding solutions that work for everyone. What kind of solution are you proposing? I was thinking we could have all 4 girls sit down together with the school counselor. They could talk through their differences and maybe the other girls could apologize. We could also ask them to take down the video from social media. David looked at his daughter, who was now crying silently. The principal was suggesting that Ava sit down with her attackers and work out their differences, as if this had been some kind of mutual disagreement. That's not acceptable, David said firmly. Mr. Thompson, I'm trying to find a reasonable middle ground here. There is no middle ground. My daughter was assaulted. The perpetrators need to face consequences. Real consequences. Principal Williams sighed. If you insist on pursuing this aggressively, I suppose I could suspend the other girls for a day or 2. Would that satisfy you? A day or 2? For assault and harassment? Mr. Thompson, you keep using these legal terms, but we're talking about teenage girls who made a poor choice. A suspension sends a clear message without ruining their records permanently. David realized he was getting nowhere. This woman was more concerned about protecting the school's reputation and the attackers than she was about helping his daughter. I want those girls expelled. Expelled? For cutting someone's hair? That seems extremely harsh. For assault, harassment, and creating a hostile environment based on discrimination. Principal Williams stood up. I'm sorry, but I can't justify expulsion for this incident. The most I can offer is a brief suspension and mandatory counseling. David looked at his daughter one more time, then made a decision that would change everything. Then we have nothing more to discuss here. Mr. Thompson, please don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. It's already complicated. You've made it complicated by refusing to take this seriously. David helped Ava stand up. Come on, sweetheart. We're leaving. Where are you going? Principal Williams asked. To find someone who will take the assault of my daughter seriously. As they walked out of the office, David was already formulating his next move. If the school wouldn't provide justice, he would find it elsewhere. David and Ava sat in his car in the school parking lot. The afternoon sun was beating down through the windshield, but neither of them seemed to notice. David's hands were still shaking with anger from the meeting with Principal Williams. Dad, what are we going to do now? Ava asked quietly. David looked at his daughter. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hair was still a mess from the attack, and she looked smaller than he had ever seen her. But there was something else there, too. A spark of determination that reminded him why he was so proud to be her father. We're going to make sure this never happens to another kid, he said. David pulled out his phone and stared at it for a moment. What he was about to do would change everything. There would be no going back, no quiet resolution, no sweeping this under the rug. But looking at his daughter, he knew it was the right thing to do. Ava, I'm going to call the police. Are you okay with that? Her eyes widened. The police? But Dad, what if it makes things worse at school? Honey, things at school are already bad. The principal just told us that the girls who attacked you will get maybe a day or 2 of suspension. That's not justice. That's not protection for you or for other kids who might be targeted next. Ava thought about this for a moment. Will they arrest the girls who did this? I don't know. But they'll investigate it properly. They'll take it seriously in a way the school refuses to. Okay, Ava said, her voice stronger than before. Call them. David dialed 911, his heart racing. He had never imagined he would be making this kind of call about his own child. What's your emergency? I need to report an assault that happened at Jefferson Middle School today. My daughter was attacked by 3 other students during class time. Is she injured and in need of medical attention? David looked at Ava. No immediate medical attention needed, but she was physically assaulted and needs to speak with an officer. Are you still at the school? Yes, we're in the parking lot. I'm sending a unit to your location. Can you tell me what happened? David took a deep breath. 3 8th-grade students cornered my daughter in the locker room during gym class. They cut her hair without her permission while making discriminatory comments about her appearance. They recorded the entire attack and posted it on social media. There was a pause on the other end. They cut her hair without permission? Yes. Significant amounts of hair were cut off while she was being held against her will. There's video evidence that they created themselves. I see. And you said they made discriminatory comments? Yes. Comments about her natural hair texture and how she needed to change her appearance to fit in. Okay, sir. I have officers en route. Please stay where you are. David hung up and looked at Ava. They're sending officers to talk to us. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cars pulled into the school parking lot. David watched as 4 officers got out and walked toward his car. The lead officer was a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Mr. Thompson, I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Johnson. We understand there was an incident involving your daughter today? Yes. Thank you for coming so quickly. Would you mind if we spoke with both of you about what happened? We can talk here or go inside the school, whatever makes your daughter more comfortable. Ava spoke up for the first time. Can we talk here? I don't want to go back inside right now. Of course. That's completely understandable. Officer Martinez sat down on the curb next to David's car, putting herself at Ava's eye level. Hi there. I'm Officer Martinez. Can you tell me what happened today? David watched as Ava told her story again, this time to someone who was actually listening. Officer Martinez took notes, asked clarifying questions, and treated every detail as important. Can I see the video that was posted online? Officer Martinez asked. Ava showed her the phone, and David watched the officer's expression change as she watched the footage. Her jaw tightened and she exchanged a look with her partner. This is very clear evidence of assault, Officer Martinez said, and the comments they made while doing it suggest this may qualify as a bias-motivated crime. The school principal said it was just kids being kids, David said. Officer Johnson shook his head. Sir, what happened to your daughter is not kids being kids. This is assault, harassment, and possibly a hate crime depending on the exact nature of the comments made. What happens now? Ava asked. We're going to file a report and begin an investigation. We'll need to interview the 3 girls who did this as well as any witnesses. We'll also need to speak with school officials about why this was allowed to happen during class time. Officer Martinez stood up. Mr. Thompson, we're going to need you to come to the station to file a formal complaint. Is that something you can do today? Absolutely. Good. We take these matters very seriously, especially when they involve minors and take place on school property. Just then, Principal Williams came walking quickly across the parking lot toward them. She looked flustered and concerned, which was a dramatic change from her casual attitude during their meeting. Officers, is there some kind of problem here? Officer Martinez turned to face her. You must be the principal. We're investigating an assault that took place on your campus today. Assault? I think there may be some misunderstanding. We had a minor incident between some girls, but it's been resolved through our internal processes. Ma'am, we've seen video evidence of 3 students cutting another student's hair without permission while making discriminatory comments. That's not a minor incident. Principal Williams's face went pale. Officers, surely we can handle this internally. These are good kids from good families. I'm sure we can work something out that doesn't involve the criminal justice system. Officer Johnson stepped forward. Principal Williams, when a crime occurs on school property, it's not just a school matter anymore. It's a legal matter. But the girls involved could have their futures ruined over one mistake. What about this young lady's future? Officer Martinez gestured toward Ava. What about her RE? David watched as Principal Williams realized that her strategy of minimizing the incident wasn't going to work with the police officers. I suppose we could increase their punishment, she offered weakly. Ma'am, the punishment is not up to the school anymore. This is now a criminal investigation. Officer Martinez turned back to David. Sir, can you and your daughter follow us to the station? We'd like to get your formal statements while the details are still fresh. Of course. As they prepared to leave, Principal Williams made one last attempt. Mr. Thompson, please think about what's best for everyone involved. These girls made a mistake, but they don't deserve to have their lives destroyed. David looked at her for a long moment. Principal Williams, my daughter was attacked on your campus during class time. Instead of protecting her, you suggested she should change her appearance to avoid future attacks. You offered her attackers a slap on the wrist and asked my daughter to sit down with them and work it out. You've shown more concern for their futures than for her trauma. That's not fair. What's not fair is that my daughter has to be afraid to go to school because you won't protect her. David got into his car with Ava. As they drove away, following the police officers, he looked in his rearview mirror. and saw Principal Williams standing alone in the parking lot, probably realizing for the first time that this situation was completely out of her control. "Dad?" Ava said quietly. "Yes, sweetheart? Thank you for believing me. Thank you for fighting for me. Always. Ava, always." As they drove toward the police station, David felt something he hadn't felt since this whole nightmare began. Hope. Finally, someone was taking his daughter's attack seriously. Finally, there might be real consequences for the people who hurt her. The 911 call had changed everything. There was no going back now. 3 weeks after the 911 call, David sat in a courthouse waiting room with Ava. The investigation had moved faster than anyone expected. Officer Martinez had been thorough and professional, treating the case with the seriousness it deserved. The 3 girls who attacked Ava had been charged with assault and bias-motivated harassment. Their parents, who had initially dismissed the incident as harmless pranking, were now facing the reality that their children might have criminal records. "Dad, are you sure we're doing the right thing?" Ava asked, fidgeting with her sleeves. David looked at his daughter. Over the past 3 weeks, she had grown stronger. The initial fear and shame had been replaced by a quiet determination. She had even decided to keep her hair short, saying it made her feel more confident. "Sweetheart, doing the right thing isn't always easy, but look at what's already changed." And things had changed dramatically at Jefferson Middle School. The police investigation had revealed that this wasn't an isolated incident. Officer Martinez had interviewed dozens of students and discovered a pattern of harassment targeting kids who looked different, acted different, or came from different backgrounds. 2 other students had come forward with their own stories of being targeted. One boy had been cornered in the bathroom and had slurs written on his backpack. A girl with a disability had been filmed without her permission and mocked online. In each case, the school had minimized the incidents and failed to take meaningful action. The story had caught the attention of local news outlets. When the video of Ava's attack went viral beyond the school, it sparked conversations about bullying, discrimination, and the responsibility of schools to protect all students. Principal Williams had been placed on administrative leave pending a district investigation. The school board was reviewing the entire disciplinary policy and considering implementing new training for staff on recognizing and addressing bias-motivated incidents. "Mr. Thompson?" A voice called from across the waiting room. David looked up to see Detective Rivera, who had taken over the case from Officer Martinez. "The hearing is about to begin. Are you both ready?" They walked into the courtroom together. It was smaller than David had expected, with just a few rows of seats and a judge's bench at the front. The 3 girls who had attacked Ava were sitting with their parents and lawyers on the other side of the room. David noticed that none of them looked at Ava as she walked in. Their parents, who had been so dismissive at the beginning, now looked worried and ashamed. Judge Harrison was an older black woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. She had a reputation for being fair but firm, especially in cases involving young people. "This hearing is to determine the appropriate consequences for the assault and harassment of Ava Thompson," Judge Harrison began. "I've reviewed all the evidence, including the video footage, witness statements, and the defendant's previous disciplinary records." She looked directly at the 3 girls. "Katie, Jessica, and Lauren, you've each pleaded guilty to assault and bias-motivated harassment. Before I determine your sentences, I want each of you to understand the impact of your actions." The judge turned to Ava. "Miss Thompson, would you like to tell the court how this incident has affected you?" Ava stood up slowly. Her voice was quiet but steady. "What they did to me wasn't just about cutting my hair. They made me feel like there was something wrong with the way I looked, like I didn't belong at my school because I was different." She paused, gathering courage. "I used to love going to school. I had friends, I got good grades, and I felt confident. After the attack, I was afraid to leave my house. I was afraid that everyone was looking at me and laughing." David watched the 3 girls as Ava spoke. Katie, the ringleader, was staring at her hands. Jessica was crying quietly. Lauren looked like she wanted to disappear. "But I've learned something important," Ava continued. "Standing up for myself and asking for help wasn't weak. It was brave. And I hope that what happened to me helps protect other kids from going through the same thing." Judge Harrison nodded approvingly. "Thank you, Miss Thompson. Your courage in speaking up has indeed helped other students." She turned back to the defendants. "Katie, as the primary instigator, You'll serve 40 hours of community service working with anti-bullying organizations. You'll also write a letter of apology to Ms. Thompson and participate in bias awareness counseling. Jessica and Lauren, you'll each serve 30 hours of community service and participate in the same counseling program. The judge's voice became more serious. Additionally, all three of you are banned from social media for 6 months, and any further incidents of harassment or discrimination will result in much more severe consequences. She looked at the parents. I'm also ordering that all 3 girls and their families participate in restorative justice sessions with the Thompson family, if the Thompsons are willing. David squeezed Ava's hand. They had already discussed this possibility. It wouldn't be easy, but it might help everyone involved understand the real impact of their actions. After the hearing, David and Ava walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunlight. Detective Rivera caught up with them on the steps. Mr. Thompson, I wanted to let you know that the school district has asked us to conduct training sessions for all their staff on recognizing and responding to bias incidents. That's wonderful news. Your daughter's courage in speaking up has created real change. That's not something that happens every day. As they drove home, Ava was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke up. Dad, do you think those girls really understand what they did wrong? David thought carefully before answering. I think they're starting to understand. Whether they truly change as people will depend on what they do with this experience. I hope they do change. Not just be gotta feel safe at school. Oz, they got in trouble, but because they realized that hurting people is wrong. 6 months later, David was invited to speak at a school board meeting about the new anti-bullying policies that had been implemented across the district. Ava had chosen to come with him. The school board meeting was packed with parents, students, and community members. David looked out at the audience and saw faces of all different colors and backgrounds. This was what he wanted for his daughter's school, a place where everyone belonged. When my daughter was attacked at Jefferson Middle School, he began. The first response was to minimize what happened and protect the attackers rather than the victim. But today, I'm proud to see a school district that takes bias and harassment seriously. He gestured to Ava, who was sitting in the front row. My daughter taught me that speaking up isn't just about getting justice for yourself. It's about creating a safer world for everyone who comes after you. The new policies were comprehensive. Mandatory bias training for all staff. Clear consequences for harassment based on race, religion, disability, or other characteristics. Support systems for victims. And most importantly, a culture that encouraged students to speak up when they saw injustice. Ava was thriving at school now. She had joined the student council and was working on a peer mediation program. The attack that had initially devastated her had ultimately made her stronger and more determined to help others. As they drove home from the school board meeting, Ava turned to her father. Dad, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't called the police that day? David thought about it. Those girls probably would have gotten away with it. Other kids might have been targeted, and you would have learned that standing up for yourself doesn't work. Instead, I learned that my voice matters. Your voice has always mattered, sweetheart, but now you know how powerful it can be when you use it. That night, David got an email from Officer Martinez, who had stayed in touch throughout the legal process. She was writing to let him know that 2 other school districts in the area had reached out for help, implementing similar policies to prevent bias-motivated harassment. The 911 call that had started as a desperate father trying to protect his daughter had rippled out into something much larger. It had created accountability where there had been none. It had given voice to other students who had been silenced, and it had proven that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hard thing to do. David looked in on Ava before going to bed. She was asleep with a book on her nightstand about civil rights leaders. On her desk was a photo from the school board meeting, where she was shaking hands with the new superintendent who had promised to make schools safe for all students. His daughter had been transformed by her experience, but not in the way her attackers had intended. Instead of being diminished, she had grown stronger. Instead of hiding, she had found her voice. And instead of accepting injustice, she had helped create change. The 911 call had exposed everything: the attack, the school's failures, and the need for real reform. But most importantly, it had revealed the strength and courage that had been inside his daughter all along.